The long-awaited 12-team college football playoff kicked off this past weekend, and the home teams and favorites all rolled. If that's surprising to you, you haven't been watching college football for the past decade. We're going to talk about everything that happened this past weekend on the field and on college football Twitter. My goodness, what a toxic place to be this weekend. This podcast, of course, we ain't toxic. We're always talking ball. Tyler Noe, Lance Barton. Lance, we're just going to dive right in. It's a Christmas episode. Merry Christmas to everyone out there. If you are listening to us as you're driving to a relative's house, we appreciate it. We appreciate your wife for putting up with it. Maybe she enjoys the show. That's great. So we appreciate it. We appreciate you guys following along. Lance, let's start in Columbus last night, Saturday night, where I was at a Christmas party until midway through the second quarter, but keeping tabs on my phone. And by the time I got home, it was 21-zip, Ohio State. And so I, caught the, rewound it back, caught the first quarter, all that stuff. And just from kind of just quick glances, I mean, it looks like I'm not sure Ohio State could have played any better if they tried last night.
No, the first quarter, that was the most dominant of any of the marquee matchups that we saw in all of college football this year. That was the most dominant performance that I've seen from any college football team in the country, that first quarter for Ohio State. Just all around, both sides of the ball, all phases of the game. Ohio State was living in the backfield, getting to Nico on defense. They were blanketing receivers. They were shutting down the run game. I mean, at one point, dude, I think, Ohio State had like close to 200 total yards after a quarter, and, Tennessee had negative yardage. And, I mean, nothing could go right. Dylan Sampson, the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, running back for Tennessee, gets injured and gets, a banged-up hammy. And Squirrel Wright, receiver, really good receiver for Tennessee, he gets banged up. You see other dudes limping off the field, defensive linemen limping off the field, but Ohio State would have dominated the game, I think, no matter what, based off, obviously, how big of a mismatch it seemed like all night. But, dude, that opening drive where Tennessee sacked Will Howard for a pretty significant loss on third down and was going to make Ohio State punt on the play. The dude barely grabbed the face. I mean, it's a face mask. It's a penalty. I mean, it actually was right call, obviously. And, I mean, within seconds after that face mask penalty, Will Howard throws one of my buddies texted me and said, was that the best throw that Will Howard's made in his entire life? And it really might have been, until he did another one that was just as good later on in the second half to the same guy, and Jeremiah Smith. I mean, that's not a coming out party, but what an incredible performance by Jeremiah Smith. A lot of people that have not seen that guy play yet this year that watched him last night, dude, no doubt would be, we saw all the NFL scouts on, last night coming out and saying that he would be a top 5 pick in this year's NFL draft as a true freshman. But that touchdown pass by Will Howard, that really started it all. And on a bigger picture note, what Ohio State proved last night is if that version of Ohio State, the best version of Ohio State, shows up, nobody's beating them. The A+ best game from Ohio State is better than everybody else's A+ best game.
How easily for them is that going to be duplicated, though? Obviously, they're going to be playing Oregon next,
right?
And so really tough team to play. They've already lost to them once this year, but I mean, I cannot believe that was the same team that was on the field against Michigan 3 weeks ago. Obviously, we saw a different game plan. They, attacked Tennessee through their secondary, which everybody else in the preseason was saying, hey, that is a place where you can attack Tennessee's defenses. They're their secondary. Nobody really did that this year. For the schedule they faced in the SEC, Carson Beck was the best quarterback they faced. He ripped them up for 300 yards.
Yep.
And so it just, I don't know. Now, I mean, we saw Oregon's defense get ripped up by Penn State's offense. So,
I mean, Ohio State had a lot of. Ohio State was really good against Oregon too.
I mean, that was the only other game that Will Howard threw for over 300 yards on.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I'm with you. The performance last night, I mean, I tweeted it out. I said, why did it take this entire season for Ohio State to, if you've listened to this podcast, man, you've heard us say so many times, why did it take Ohio State all year long to finally unleash their freak athlete, skill position players in space and let them go to work? Nobody else has players like that. Oregon's the only team that's even close as far as skill position wise across the board. But even Oregon doesn't have the like Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith, Tate, and the two running backs. I mean, multiple tight ends. Again, they've got really good players, but not Ohio State's. And it was very evident early on. If you're a live bettor, that was one of those that you could look at really quick and say, uh-oh. Like I actually texted you and old Fred in our group text, uh-oh, really early when Ohio State made it pretty clear that they were finally going to be getting the football to these guys in space. And then, lo and behold, it opened up the run game. It helped open up the run game a little bit. I mean, Ohio State didn't try to just, bludgeon them with the run game by any means. I mean, they had 156 yards rushing, 4.7 yards a carry. That's fine. But they hit some big plays in the run game with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. So, again, man, if that version of Ohio State shows up, I don't know who's going to beat them. I'll say, too, the whole Big Orange takeover thing, it really was. The Tennessee fans did show up. Could you imagine paying all that money, going there, and then seeing what you saw?
Yeah.
That was, I mean, as far as Tennessee's concerned, I actually was impressed with Nico because they had to put the entire game on him. Mm-hmm. They got down so big so early, the injuries that were happening around him. I mean, he obviously could have played better, but like overall, like I thought Nico like showed a lot of toughness, grew up a little bit in that game. But what I can tell you what do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Nico's a first-year starter, right? And I think we've harped on it. We tweeted about it, all that stuff. We harped on Tennessee's road struggles, right? They've lost 6 of their past 9 on the road, a lot of those by double digits. And I think if there's just maybe a sliver of hope you can take from a game like this is that, you would hope that experience last night playing in front of 100,000+ people, which you get a lot of on the road in SEC, is only going to help him, right? And is only going to help the rest of that. They were trotting out a bunch of different freshmen. I mean, they had, Lewis in there at running back. He's a freshman. They had one of their wide receivers, number 14. I can't remember his last name. He was a freshman. A lot of true freshmen they were trotting out there because of injuries. And you just got to think, like, you got to just take anything you can if you're a Tennessee fan, into next year. I mean, you're going to be playing at Alabama next year, right? That's going to be a hostile environment. So you got to hope, like, you take this and you can learn from it and use it in the future somehow, because Josh Heupel's got to make changes to whatever they're doing when they go on the road.
Yeah,
we could say that for 90% of the teams in college football this year, but it's becoming a pattern with him the past couple of years. He's got to make changes.
Yeah, to that point, I tweeted it out last night. Since last year, the beginning of last year, so the last 2 seasons, Tennessee is now 3-6 in their last 9 road games, and they have lost 5 of those 6 games by double digits. So, yeah, the home-road dichotomy for Tennessee, it's a problem. Obviously, most teams are obviously better at home than they are away, but the good football teams, the upper tier of college football, they're not the home-road dichotomy is not that bad like Tennessee's is. So they've obviously, I agree, they've obviously got to get something fixed there. I mean, the offense is pretty abysmal, the difference between home and road with Tennessee. And it was not very good again last night, obviously. I mean, I said Nico throwing the ball overall, I don't put really a lot of the blame on him. He was put in a pretty, awful situation overall. Most of Nico's stuff, honestly, helped out with him in the run game. But, yeah, it's a problem, man, Tennessee on the road, no doubt.
Yeah. Ohio State moves on. They're going to play Oregon in the Rose Bowl, a good old-fashioned Big Ten, Pac-10 matchup. I know you don't think so, but a lot of people are saying already, hey, this could be the national championship right here. And it very well could be. I mean, this is We said it from the very beginning, brutal draw for Oregon, like going undefeated, and then your reward is probably the second or third best team in the country.
What
If they
do you
play it
think
like that.
Oregon was sitting there? I mean, again, like behind closed doors. What do you think Oregon sitting back last night watching that, knowing that team is, again, I know everybody, I know they're confident. I know Dan Lanning's a confident guy and all that, but still, your first game in this playoff and your reward as the number 1 seed is you got to go play that bunch in the Rose Bowl.
I think Lanning's just saying, he like you said, he's a confident guy. He's going to say, let's go to work. We got to go to work. We got to prep for these guys. We got to do, exactly what we did first game. And
we'll play anyone, anybody, anywhere, anytime. Yeah.
They have the rest advantage. They have the rest advantage. So there's that to go on. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a blast watching that game New Year's Day at 5 p.m. Eastern, Rose Bowl. It's going to be super fun.
Yeah.
We don't have much of a script or program here we're rolling with tonight. We're just rolling wherever this thing takes us.
Shoot from the hip, baby.
Yeah, buddy. Let's go off the field for a little bit because this is a good time to go off the field, and we should have probably started the show chronologically because Friday night Notre Dame took care of Big Ten at large Indiana, and the Twitter sphere was abuzz with a certain just certain talk from people, right? And it continued during the Penn State game. And continued got a little bit less during the Texas Clemson game that was close, and then it, shifted to a whole other direction during the Ohio State Tennessee game. It was just a place to be. Thoughts on the CFP as a whole, right? The big sentiment was the first round was terrible, right? The big sentiment was 12 teams is too much. We should have went to 8 teams. 8 teams would have been perfect, right? Those are coming from everybody who was absolutely pumped about the 12-team playoff, right? I don't have the numbers in front of me. Everybody tweeted them out. The average margin of victory in the semifinals, I think, in the 4-team playoff was around 18-ish, 17, 18 points. We had, I don't know how many blowouts out of the whole game, all the games of what was it, 20 semifinal games, we probably had a good 10, 11 blowouts. And average margin of victory this weekend was 19.
Yep.
But it's do away with the whole system, right? That's it. We're freaking out. We got to do away with the whole system, or we got to add more teams, God forbid. Last year in the NFL playoffs, in the wild card round, average margin of victory was 17 points. It's just what you get. This is what you get when you add teams, again, once you get past that eight team format, you add teams, whether it was going to be these teams or other teams, it was going to be a mismatch. Plus, you're playing at home. Like, everyone's focusing on the SMUs and the Indianas and all that. They're not focusing on the fact that these 4 home teams that won these games are pretty freaking good.
Really good football
and they're
teams.
Really good at home. They are really good home teams.
Yep.
It was going to be a struggle for Ole Miss or Alabama, who struggled on the road, or South Carolina, Miami, anybody, right? It was going to be a struggle for those teams to go in and win.
Yep.
And it was a real toxic place to be. I had to log off for get myself, a couple hours breaks here and there because you're trying to follow all the action, but it was just a real negative place to be.
Dude, all yesterday did, I told you, there's a lot of people, man, that are just miserable human beings that just want to sit around and watch the world burn. There's a lot of other podcasts that we like and follow, and there's a lot of sports writers. There's a lot of just college football media, people that we follow in general that I'm just going to be honest with you. I'll say it. You made an ass of yourself this weekend. Dude, there were literally people that I know of for a fact that are diehard Ohio State fans. Instead of sitting there and enjoying that game, you're too busy on Twitter just tweeting out about the SEC and teams that aren't even, not even Tennessee, but teams that aren't even in the freaking in the playoff and can't even sit there and enjoy the game. Dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. It was a dark place, and there was times that I was sitting there not to get on a soapbox here, but there were times that I was sitting there borderline, like, not to get emotional here almost, but like ashamed.
I mean, there were times when I was like, dude, I don't even know if I want to keep covering this sport. If this is
Dude,
the people.
I swear, man, I'm the same way. Like, that's what I'm getting at. Like, yesterday was an emotional roller coaster the whole weekend of just happy trying to enjoy college football playoff games, but more so just angry at, like, it really felt like a Republican versus Democrat, like back during the presidential race, that what I'm sitting there trying to like watch and trying to enjoy. And I'm proud of us for not getting involved in it. We just kept tweeting about the games and talking about games and whatnot. But
I tweeted a couple times trying to calm people down. Like, guys, every play, whatever happens in that play doesn't have to be an indictment on the process and the college football playoff as a whole. I mean,
yeah, if somebody misses a tackle, yeah, but so-and-so from whatever Ole Miss would have made that tackle, or so-and-so from Alabama would have made that catch, or whatever. Like, and then like on the flip side of it, during the Tennessee-Ohio State game, it was the same thing, man.
would we have loved for the games to be closer? Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody would have loved and if they were, all that discourse would have been trumped by, did you see that play? Like, that was an awesome catch, whatever. Like, all that stuff in games. And I mean, listen, if you guys have listened to our show for the past 16 months, we appreciate it. Thank you. You know that Lance and I mean, I was born in the Midwest. He was born in the South. You can know where we lie on things for the most part. And so, but it's just from both sides. It did feel very political. It was crazy.
Dude,
Like
it
a
was
civil
awful.
war going on.
It was awful, man. And I'll be the
Civil
first to
War
say,
with the Mason-Dixon line, man.
yeah, it was. And I'm the first to sit here and say, if, like Tyler said, if you've listened to this show, I am one of those that is a big proponent of strength of schedule and wins and all of that. I am a big proponent of that. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it was like my favorite team that was the first team left out. It really doesn't. I've been that way all along. I talked about it earlier this year when it came to like USC and other teams earlier in the year. Like, that is a thing that I'm a big proponent of. But I'm a huge fan of this sport. And sitting around yesterday and even being someone that is a big proponent of the whole strength of schedule stuff and all that, I was embarrassed, man, to sit there and say that I'm a diehard college football fan that's doing a college football podcast that covers this sport, and how just ridiculous people were being all weekend long. It just truly made me realize once again that the stuff that we try to come to college football and sports and entertainment to get to as an escape away from the other world that we're referencing, the political world and all of that. And this weekend was worse, just as bad or worse than any of that. And it's still carried into today. And some of the biggest names, man, that cover this sport.
It's not even, we have a good
not
following.
Just fans.
Yeah, it's you got Kiffin out there tweeting, you got Feinbaum tweeting, you got Matt Berry tweeting, you got
Joel Klatt.
Yeah, Joel Klatt. And I think it's just, and it's, people pick a side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it's not their side saying something, they get ticked off and all that stuff. Like when Herbie comes out and he says, Indiana's absolutely outclassed. And then when Tennessee gets boat raced, he doesn't come out and say anything. Like, it just fuels the fire for like ESPN's in bed with the SEC. They only want to push that agenda. Joel Klatt's on the other side on Fox, like trying to fight back against the evil machine. And it's like the freaking Avengers.
Yeah.
A symbol.
It was truly ridiculous. And again, to the point, I just stopped reading. I stopped reading anything. I was just going to our account and tweeting stuff out, and then moving on. Like, I wasn't reading anybody else's stuff.
Yeah.
So it's I'm not. Maybe the next round will be better with it, but guys, we got to do better than that. Like, I say we.
Again,
I hate. You know what? I'm not even going to say we, because we didn't do it this weekend. You guys have to be better. Y'all, I'm pointing the finger at you right here into the camera. I'm pointing at you. Y'all have to be better. Like, that's ridiculous. And the fact that y'all can't sit there and, again, it was the definition of like the movie The Dark Knight. Just some people want to watch the world burn. That's what it looked like. People just wanted to sit back this weekend and watch the world burn. instead of actually trying to enjoy any football whatsoever. Good Lord. Moving on, man, you mentioned the Notre Dame Indiana game. What a performance by your squad, by your favorite squad Friday night. Just a physical, hard-nosed, well-coached, violent, fundamentally sound football team, man. That's what they are. They don't do anything to wow you with like huge, big plays, other than, of course, the 98-yard touchdown run by Jeremiah Love. But like as far as like they're not that team that in 2024 that just like Ohio State was doing with Jeremiah Smith and stuff, like teams that, or like you'll see sometimes Oregon with some of their receivers, what they do. No, Notre Dame lines up and they just want to see how much you really like football.
Yeah.
How much you really like putting those pads on and putting that helmet on and popping somebody on that field. That's what they want to do. And they did that early. I told you on that 98-yard touchdown run, I very rarely sit there and watch games, and then I'm not even looking at where the ball is. I am just watching the line of scrimmage and seeing what those big bodies are doing as far as who's moving who. And, dude, Notre Dame's freshman left tackle, Anthony Knapp, is that his name?
Yep.
On that 98-yard run, he annihilated one of those big number 6 for Indiana. That's one of their best defensive linemen.
Kamara.
And he did it all night long.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't the only one. On the defensive side, Notre Dame's was just pushing the line of scrimmage back. And that was a difference in the game.
Yeah.
That was just a difference in the game. And then not turning the football over. Just a good performance, man.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. Indiana got that early turnover that they needed, right? And drove the ball down after that, and Rourke just makes a bad decision trying to fit the ball into a receiver. Xavier Watts is always lurking back there. He gets the pick on the 2-yard line. There probably isn't a worse or a more back-breaking 2-play combo than Watts picking that off, and then the very next play, Love going basically untouched. 98 yards to the house to go open up a 7-0 lead. The next time Notre Dame gets the ball, they just 16 plays, 9 minutes.
Like 83 yards or whatever. Yeah, 16 play drive. Yeah.
14-0 lead, and then it looked like Notre Dame then turned into a team that looked like, okay, we don't have to empty the bag on this team. We know we got this one in control. We can play what we want to play right now. Although Riley Leonard, he's a quarterback who when you're watching Notre Dame play, like obviously because they don't take a ton of deep shots, you're kind of like, man, what's going on? Like, I need to see more from him. Like, if they're going to, face Georgia next round, I got to see more from him, see him do more. And he had like probably the quietest 23 for 32, 201 yards, 1 touchdown pass, 1 rushing touchdown. He just kind of quietly, he didn't run the ball a lot in the first half till the last drive, but he quietly, grinds it out with his legs like Jake talked about last week on our show. And Indiana, made it close there at the end with, a couple garbage time touchdowns, but it was really never in doubt. And then I gotta talk about our guy, Curt Cignetti. We talked about him all season long. We were big fans of Sigs, and we rooted on Indiana football all season long. We were one of the backers of IU. All the way till the end. Like we kind of gave them their flowers. They were 11-1. They didn't beat anybody, right? But they didn't lose to anybody bad.
Nope.
They were highly rated in the power ratings, like higher than SMU. Their strength of record was higher than someone like SMU and Clemson. So they put together as good of a resume as they could with that schedule without beating anybody. Like it was just with the way they beat some of the other lower tier teams, aside from Michigan, that was about as well as a resume they could put together.
Literally, resume wise, bro, the only thing they could have done better was just not lose as bad as they lost to Ohio State.
Yeah,
that's the only thing they could have done better.
Yeah,
so I agree.
So Sigs, he since he got there in Bloomington, he's been confident. He was on the basketball court a couple days in, saying Purdue sucks, and so does Ohio State and Michigan. And I think, he had to instill some confidence in this program because Indiana football is down there with the likes of Vanderbilt and Duke in the history of football as being bad. And to his credit, he kept doing it all the way to the end. He kept talking all the way while he was sitting on game day in South Bend, saying we don't just beat top 25 teams, we beat the crap out of them, right? He's talking all this stuff. He's talking very confident like he is, and almost to a point where people think it's cockiness, it's brashness, all that stuff. And then the guy goes out there and coaches one of the most scared, timid games that I have ever seen from a playoff team in any sport, a do or die situation where you're not getting a fifth quarter, buddy. When there's 11 minutes left in the game and you're down by 17 and you're in midfield and you punt the ball, that's waving the white flag.
Yeah,
that's waving the white flag, and you are literally talking the talk and not walking the walk.
Yeah, it was the whole game, man. It was the whole
fair
game.
Fair catches on the kickoffs.
Yep.
Not even attempting to run one back, running the ball in 3rd and 9 at midfield and then punting instead of like setting it up for like a 4th down attempt. I don't know, man. It was just very confusing the way he coached that game.
It was, to me, he was coaching the game like he was trying to see about how many points he couldn't lose by. Like I saw,
and I don't know if that's to kind of. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, you're good.
I don't know if that's to kind of just keep the ball rolling in Bloomington, getting some more dudes in there. I mean, because that's the thing when you watch Indiana versus Notre Dame and Indiana versus Ohio State, the depth that Notre Dame and Ohio State have built over the years, especially in the trenches.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, think about it. Ohio State missing 2 offensive linemen. Notre Dame the whole season has been missing 2 offensive linemen, and they got 2 freshmen out there playing. But this the depth that those programs have, that takes time to build.
Yep.
Indiana brought in a bunch of transfers and a lot of guys from JMU and other places, Ohio, all that stuff. They just don't have the depth, though. And they don't have the guys up front. Cignetti said it after the game. Notre Dame's got more depth. They just got bigger guys up front, like a little bit bigger than us.
Yep.
And I don't know if just kind of his talk is like, hey, we're going to keep talking. You guys, in the transfer portal, you hear us talking. Come on over. We're a confident bunch. Come play ball with us. I don't know. I don't know what his angle is.
Yeah, I'm not even going to add anything to what you said there, man. Well said. I agree with you on all of it. As far as the way he coached and all the talk, he definitely talked the talk, but did not walk the walk with how, especially as much as he talks. As far as Indiana is concerned, yeah, I mean, they're starting. They've got those 2 monster interior defensive linemen. Outside of that, yeah, they don't really have anybody else they can bring in other waves or offensive line-wise in the 3 games that they played this year where they actually played against guys that have teams that have NFL defensive linemen on their roster. They looked like a very mortal offense and looked bad in 2 of the games against Ohio State and Notre Dame. I'm referring to Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Michigan when I'm referring to the 3 teams for those listening. And they didn't look very good at all. Against everybody else, they dominated. So I agree. The future has a chance to be really bright in Bloomington, as bright as it's ever been. They can really build on this. There's no reason for anyone to sit back and say, if you're in Indiana, well, gosh, we didn't belong, and now what's going to happen to our program. And they need to move forward and keep building from this. Cignetti can coach. You don't win as many games as that guy has won at every single level he's been at every single program he's been at. I mean, the dude really does just win. Like his whole comment about I win, Google me. I mean, if you actually do Google him and look up what his win-loss record is, it's as impressive as there is in all of college football. He's not lying about that. He just got to get the horses in there. And it just was a really bad look when he went on to College game day like he did. And Shane Gillis from the Notre Dame guest picker ended up calling him out, too, about how that he left his team from the locker room to go out there and do that, deal on the game day set and then went back with his team. That I'm not going to lie, that didn't look great. But to your point, Tyler, I do think, the guy coached under Nick Saban. He knows recruiting is the game. He knew that they were on that stage that they were on, and he needs to do everything he can. The ABC, always be recruiting, is what they say down south. Yeah. That dude, and he knows that. And I think that that's what he was doing in that moment. And he knows he's got to get more players there in Bloomington to be able to stay and sustain that success to be able to compete at the highest level. Will they be able to do that? Time will tell. But it was a hell of a start and a great year. But as far as Notre Dame's concerned, dude, you ought to be proud of that effort. I was happy for you, man. I mean, your boys playing the first ever 12-team college football playoff game, the first playoff game ever played on a college campus. I think that was poetic justice that it was in South Bend at a absolute just historic place like that at the Golden Dome. That was awesome. We're going to get way more into it, but hey, in New Orleans, in the Big Easy, strap up those chin straps tight, baby, and lock them gates, because that will not be for the faint of heart. The Dogs and the Irish, those two teams want to try to rip each other's head off, and I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah. Indiana fans, solid season for you guys. You don't, like Lance said, you don't need to be out there saying you don't belong. Everyone else is already going to say that for you. So, but yeah, Notre Dame gets a big win. That atmosphere was electric.
Yeah.
Absolutely electric. Yeah, Notre Dame versus Georgia. I for one am just absolutely stoked for an 8:45 kickoff on January 1st.
If you ever listen to this show, guys, my boy here at Eastern Time Zone. Again, we're both dads. We're both dads here, fathers of two. And every time that a late kick, my boy here just complains so much, and I got to admit, I don't blame him.
And if you know anything about college football, you know that thing's not kicking at 8:45, especially if that Ohio State-Oregon game is as good as everybody thinks and it goes a little later. I mean, we've seen Sugar Bowls before start well past 9 p.m. Eastern. So,
and dude, the Catholics and the Georgia fans that'll be down there in the Big Easy, and the game won't kick off until probably 9 o'clock local time. Woo-hoo-hoo. They'll be lathered up, bro, for that one.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that one on our show coming out next Monday, which will be our next episode here. But yeah, big win for Marcus Freeman. He doesn't struggle too much in the big games, so that's promising. And we'll talk about that one. It's one that we've all kind of been looking forward to since we first saw the bracket come out. State College, Pennsylvania. Penn State gets a 38-10 win over SMU. SMU caught a lot of flack in the first half of this one. You know, obviously, the stuff was there online. They don't belong. They don't belong. To me, I thought 21 dudes who started for SMU belonged.
Mm-hmm.
And one dude really kind of I hate to put the blame on one guy. Man, Kevin Jennings looked, poor SMU defense. They were playing well in that first half. The other guys were making plays when Jennings could actually throw the ball to them. They were running the ball well. They got down the field super quick, and he has a 4th and 1. They go for it. Rhett Lashley, rolls the dice, knows he's going to need some touchdowns in this game. Rolls the dice. Beautiful play call with a quarterback keeper, and he can keep it and get the first down, which he 99% would have got that first down. Or he could just toss the rock to a wide open guy in the end zone for a touchdown. And he tosses it to that guy, and he tosses it a little behind, incomplete. After that, the defense held up again, but he just kept throwing pick sixes to Penn State. To me, I thought SMU, the rest of the guys, for the cold weather and obviously being outmatched, you're an 8.5-point dog against Penn State. I thought SMU played pretty well. Kevin Jennings has kind of let him down here.
Yeah, I agree, man. The 2 pick sixes were just absolutely back-breaking. If you really take that away, it was. I think the score prediction I had was around 27-10, 27-13.
Similar to the Ohio State IU game, right?
Yeah.
Those 2 special teams, boneheaded plays.
Yeah.
And kind of give them 2 touchdowns right there.
Yep. And then in the second half, really, when the meaningful minutes, kind of like late second quarter, then really in that third quarter, then very early in the fourth quarter, Penn State was imposing their will and keeping the football. They're owning the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Dude, Abdul Carter and Kobe King and just the speed. I texted our boy Matt Massaros and said the thing that I think that I was maybe most wrong about all year was earlier in the year when I talked about Penn State's lack of speed on defense, and that all had to do with that first half game against USC when I was watching that game with my own eyeballs, and it felt like the USC was playing a different sport as opposed to Penn State. And then Penn State flipped a switch in the second half. Dude, the athletes that Penn State's got on defense, and we saw them in person there at that Big Ten championship game against Oregon. I mean, they were on full display, man. Those navy blue jerseys were in the backfield constantly against SMU. SMU could not block them. At one point, I think the officials just got tired of just throwing flags for holding on SMU because I think they could have called it about every play. I looked up and somebody was being held trying to get into the backfield almost every play. But you're right, man. SMU's defense played their butts off and played as hard as they possibly could. They just were on the field, almost the whole time. They were late in that second. They were giving out a little bit in that second half. But I mean, dude, Penn State, man. They're the team. I got a little bit of a hot take here. They're the team that just nobody is talking about whatsoever, taking remotely even slightly serious as a chance to possibly go win this thing. Nobody's talking about them at all about that. And
because they've never won a big game in their lives.
I know, man. I know. But they can play, dude. They've got some the defensive players that they've got, the corners that they've got two really good corners that are going to be playing in the NFL. They've got two great pass rushers. They really defend the run well. Kotelnicki is a really good offensive coordinator. They've got arguably the best football player in this whole thing in Tyler Warren, the best overall player. I mean, they're a problem, man. I mean, we saw them in person there against Oregon.
Yeah.
If Drew Allar doesn't throw that pick six, whenever that was, kind of early in the game, I mean, that is a possible Penn State W in that game. But I know what you mean. I know James Franklin has never won a really big top five type matchup or whatever, but that was another one, dude. You think about what Penn State fans really have endured over the last, I saw a tweet that somebody was talking about happy for the Penn State fans that they got a huge game like that in a playoff game, at home, and got to experience what they saw and what they got to experience instead of watching their team lose to Ohio State or Michigan or whatever, because that's usually who their biggest games obviously are against. Seeing a big playoff game like that and your team perform well on both sides of the ball, good for Penn State fans. I'm probably feeling a little nostalgic towards them because they were so cool to be around there at the Big Ten championship game. They're all nice and stuff. But, man, Penn State's a problem, and people need to be talking about them more as a possible team that can go and make some noise in this playoff.
Yep. And for SMU, we said it before the game, penalties and turnovers. That was going to be the key for them.
You were all over that, bro. Good call.
Not going to be able to be corrected in one game. And, like we said, Kevin Jennings just throwing it to Penn State. Penalties, like you said, holding, all that stuff. It was a recipe for disaster. But, hey, first season in a Power 4 conference, and they're in the playoff. If you know anything about Rhett Lashley, he's a heck of a coach. If you know anything about SMU and where they're located, they've got a ton of money and resources. And they're in the ACC with Clemson and Miami. That's kind of a three-headed race right now. And, I haven't really dove into their schedule, what it's going to look like next year. I would assume it's going to be a little tougher because it can't get much easier, but it's going to they'll be set up. They'll be set up for the long run. I think they're in Dallas. So good for SMU. Let's Penn State, they got Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. Boise State has played well in the Fiesta Bowl, man. They've got the most wins without any losses in the Fiesta Bowl history.
Giant killers there, man.
Yeah, and I think let's tie this back into some more CFP talk before we talk about our last game here. We talked about the home field advantage. If you see some of these games, Indiana, Notre Dame, maybe Clemson, Texas, on even really just kind of the momentum of the Penn State game, you see these on neutral fields, maybe it's a different story, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think home field was so important. For me, one of the takeaways was of the first round was I think there need to be more home games.
Hell yeah, they do. Yeah, that was dude, we've talked about it, man. I mean, what separates college football from any other sport, dude, is the pageantry of it, the emotion, the passion. behind it. I mean, that scene Friday night, man, in South Bend was incredible. And hearing someone like Marcus Freeman, who played for the freaking Buckeyes, has played in huge games. He's coached in big games at Notre Dame. Hearing him after the game, just his like raw emotion from just talking about that atmosphere and that feel of that. And people saying the same thing about like Chris Fowler. Dude, Chris Fowler's called some of the biggest games in all of college football. And he had like these videos on his Instagram story and stuff. And he said, haven't felt too much like this. Like the feeling right now on this field and in this stadium is unbelievable. I agree. And I definitely think within the next decade, we'll have, I think, a significantly like more, because they're going to be probably going to more teams, well, like it or not. That's probably what's going to happen. I think we're going to have more home playoff games. I could see it to where like the semis, maybe the semifinals and finals are played somewhere. But the stuff that people are saying, that most people are saying, that they wish that they would play every round on somebody's home field in a home stadium and then play the national championship game at the Rose Bowl would be incredible. That would be sick.
Yeah, I think if we can fix the college football calendar, move it up a little bit, go to 16 teams, like you said, just like the NFL playoffs. There's only one game on a neutral field in the NFL playoffs. It's just tough to do when it's an uneven sport. And in the current format that it's in, with everybody still involved with the NCAA and everybody's still included, nobody's broken off yet. It's always going to be an uneven sport. Yeah, that's just so. How do you determine how do you determine who gets the higher seed and gets the home game? You're always going to piss someone off. It's in the NFL, like your record is what you are, right?
Yeah.
That's just kind of the name of it. But I think one change that definitely needs to happen, I think everybody's in agreement, they need to get away from the conference champion getting a bye.
Yeah, the highest ranked conference champs getting one of those buys. No.
Yeah, I think that would help a lot of things. I mean, I think honestly, still though, if you're having Boise State and Arizona State play in these first round games, they're probably going to be the same. Probably the same if they're on the road, especially. There's going to be the same result. They're going to be blowouts. You're just weeding out, the teams that kind of just made it in.
Yeah.
They want to make as long as those conference championship games are around, they want to make them worth something. And I know, as crazy as it would sound, don't give them an automatic bye, but like Clemson, if you won the ACC, you get a home game. But like maybe Clemson has to host Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
You got them at home, but it's still like, a top team. I just don't know how they do that. I don't know how that looks in the future. We're just kind of going off the top of our head here on kind of just solutions for this. But I think that right there is going to be a pretty easy fix to kind of even out the games. And I think that would only make the quarterfinal games and beyond a lot better.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm with you on the top four. The top four, the highest ranked conference champions, can't continue to get buys. Yeah, it needs to be the best team. So you've got the top ranked in the top four.
Right. Last question for you. After watching that first round, how do you feel? What are your current thoughts on the selection committee?
I still feel the same way that I've always felt, in that who you beat, I align more with what Kirk Herbstreit had to say. And that's, if you want to sit here and try to say, well, that's SEC, whatever, go on Twitter and be a keyboard warrior piece of shit on Twitter. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. That's not why I'm saying that. Again, I would say the same thing if it was somebody else from a different conference. I would. But there has to be some sort of a fine line that you have to draw at some point of, you go an entire season and you don't beat anybody, but you get to go to the playoffs. But I will say this, as opposed to the teams that did not get in. Alabama, for example, the team that I'm a fan of, forced the committee to not put them in. They didn't leave them any choice by how bad they lost to Oklahoma. Okay? So As
That's
far
what I
as
thought about. That's what I thought about during that SMU game. Everyone's like, Kevin Jennings is terrible. Put Alabama. I was like, we just saw Jalen Milroe do what Kevin Jennings is doing against Oklahoma 3 weeks ago.
right, right. But at some point though, like but it also like you're the one that pointed it out. It was hilarious that all of the talk about teams that shouldn't be in, it was always about like SMU and Clemson at one point, and somehow Indiana just kept dodging all these bullets of nobody even bringing them up. And again, I'm not saying that Indiana shouldn't have been in. I'm not saying SMU shouldn't have been in or anything like that. I don't really know, to be honest with you. I've said this, like, I don't really know what answers that you have because the games at some point, I keep going back to what Ari Washington was talking about on his show with Andy Staples. At some point, man, the games that are played on the field have to matter. Like they do.
Yeah.
And
right. I think and that's the point too, where everyone says like they didn't look at strength of schedule. I think they did. Like Alabama was ranked ahead of SMU before they lost to Oklahoma. Like they had 2 losses.
Yeah.
Like if Alabama would have won out, they would have been in over SMU with more losses in the regular season. But like when you get that extra third loss, like there's only so much you can, like you were saying, there's only so much the committee can do. Like when they're looking at your resume, there's to a point where like I know they beat a lot of good teams, but you just can't. If like you said, they took it out of the committee's hands. They forced them to not be able to pick them.
Again, I'll say this: people draw a line down the middle, just like in politics, and you're either on one side or you're the other. Like there's no gray area. It seems like from people. Well, here's the gray area that I'm going to give you on this: is that again, Alabama forced this committee to not for that people that fall on the side of, like, for example, people that fall on the Ole Miss and Alabama side, those people believe that the committee has biases against them and they just don't want to put Alabama in. They're looking for reasons. Like I've heard people say, they're looking for reasons to not put Alabama in and stuff. And then on the other side of it, you have the other people that believe they're looking for every reason possible to put Alabama in. And I actually agree with that side. I think the committee is. They are they want to put in the bigger brands. They do. That's
it's
what
like
they
what you
want.
and I said. We said, who would you before the playoff? Before they announced it? Who would you rather watch play? Like I would much rather watch Alabama play than SMU, and I said that before they got whacked.
Yeah, I agree. That is what they want to do. But again, they were forced to not put him in. But if Alabama goes out and loses 24-20 to Oklahoma, I've said this. I've been on record saying this. I think they would have gotten in. But how many more mulligans do you? Again, dude, like I'm an Alabama fan, but I'm honestly speaking what I think is the truth. Now I know somebody else has a different version of the truth, and that's fine. But how many mulligans do you need? You already lost to Tennessee and lost to Vandy. And then you go not only lose, but you lose 24-3 to a 500 level football team. And then you spend the next month bitching about not getting in. And then go watch SMU play and some of these other teams play and be like, yeah, see, look what you did. You put them in, should have put us in. Like, we wouldn't have done that. Bama just lost to Oklahoma like they did. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But like, and then on the flip side of it, the way people were acting about the Tennessee game and stuff, dude, I'm going to go off again on the soapbox. But as far as how do I think they did, I think that the way that they ranked teams before Selection Sunday was incorrect, and it backed them into a corner to begin with. And I won't be surprised. I actually do agree with Herb Street and some of them in the part of it won't shock me if they do start maybe putting a little more emphasis on strength of schedule and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a brand new committee. And, I mean, yeah, the strength of schedule thing, like I said, I think they do factor that in because Alabama and Georgia And at Ole Miss, like, because they play in the SEC, they're already going to get more mulligans than every other team. So that in itself is factoring in your strength of schedule in your conference. But like you said, there's only so many mulligans you can get. All right, let's move on to our last game. Texas, Clemson, in Austin. Clemson comes out of the gates. Beautiful scripted drive. Cade Klubnik leads them right down the field. Touchdown. You're like, oh, boy. Okay, we got to have a game here. Sark and his script right back down the field. Touchdown. And then they add on a couple more. They eventually get up 31-10. Clemson comes and makes it a game. And then Jadon Blue just see ya. 77 yards to put the icing on the cake. And get that cover for us all. That 38-24 is the final. Big story here, Texas, 292 yards on the ground.
Two tailbacks over 100 yards rushing.
That is domination is what it is. And that is the recipe for Texas. Quinn Ewers is a great quarterback, but you can tell that they don't have the 100% trust in him all the time. They don't want to put him in positions where he's got to go out and make a play to win the game. He can throw a nice deep ball when he gets protection. He throws a beautiful ball when he gets protection. But with that defense, who, man, we'll talk about that secondary here in a second. But it's with that defense and that running game, if they can continue that, they got Arizona State on deck. Again, it's another bad matchup for Arizona State. Clemson or Texas and Penn State, we talked about it. They got some really good draws here as opposed to Oregon and Georgia, and they would have been better off losing the SEC and the Big Ten championship games. Oregon and Georgia would have, but that Texas secondary, is it giving you any? I mean, I know maybe not against Sam Leavitt because they like to run the ball, but against the Dylan Gabriel or against all those weapons from Ohio State. That gives you some pause. I mean, we said it in the beginning of the episode last week when we previewed this game that this Clemson offense was going to be up there. I mean, they're up there with Georgia as like the best offense that Texas has faced. And Klubnik, with his stats that he's put up this year and everything, and you know my thoughts on Carson Beck. I mean, Cade Klubnik might have been the best quarterback they faced all year.
Oh, he was. Klubnik was the best QB this year, the play on the field this year that they faced. And, I mean, we said that Clemson was not going to be able to run the football, and they weren't able to run the football. They basically had to go straight air raid. And now we've seen 2 years in a row that when Texas's defense goes up against the best passing offenses that they face, they have issues with them. We saw it last year against Washington in the Sugar Bowl, that Washington with Michael Penix just slung it all over the yard against them. And when Clemson decided to go just straight air raid, basically in this game, they threw it all over the yard against him. Which, to be honest with you, I don't know how many teams, I don't care who you are, that Texas defensive front is going to blow you up at the line of scrimmage. You're not going to be able to run the football against them consistently. You might break one or something, but overall, you're not going to be able to run the football consistently against that team.
We get to watch old Cam Scadaboo give his best effort here in about 10 days.
I was going to say, we're going to find out here. We're going to find out, no doubt about it. But, yeah, man, on the other side of the ball, the Texas still, like, if most people think when, like, again, some of these offensive coordinators, you think that Sark, he just wants to sling it all over the yard or whatever. No, he doesn't. He wants to run the football and then play action off that and hit shots down the field. That's what when his offense is working the best, that's what he wants to do. And it was on full display in this game. And the run game was incredible. Just how they, dude, Clemson's got some really good defensive linemen. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, they just dominated them at the line of scrimmage.
I know Texas, they tried to go up the middle a little bit, and that's where Peter Woods was. And when they got off tackle, though, that was where they could damage them because, like you said, they were blowing them off the ball on the outside. You know, the tackles were doing their work. Kelvin Banks was back, so he was doing his thing. They ran the ball extremely well.
Jadon Blue averaged 10.4 yards a carry. Wisner averaged 7.3 yards a carry. They had 4 touchdowns between both of them. Ewers was fine. I mean, didn't do anything to just like wow you by any means. He was solid. He was really solid in the game. I still think for them to win it all, he's going to have to play better.
Yeah.
Something that I'm willing to say after watching Texas now in 2 big games, I thought that it may have been just the fact of Georgia, that the fact that Georgia's obviously one of the most elite teams in the country with like defensively, especially one of the most elite teams in the country with some of the players they've got on that defense. But Texas doesn't have they don't have an elite weapon on offense in the passing game. They've got really good players, and they've got multiple good players that they can throw the ball to and distribute the ball to around the field. But they don't have like anywhere like, Ohio State's got 2 or 3 guys that are elite. Oregon's got 2 or 3 guys that are elite. There's a couple of other teams. It's got like guys like that one guy that you can really just go to possibly take over a game, Tyler Warren at Penn State. Texas doesn't have that guy on offense. Again, they've got 4 or 5 really good players and really good athletes in space, and Sark does a good job distributing the ball to them or whatever. But it was very evident in this Clemson game. I'm going like, who's the guy that they can just take over the game? Now, they did so in the run game, obviously, but we all know that as the further they get down the line in this playoff, we've already seen it against Georgia. When you face the Georgias, or if it's a Notre Dame, or if it's a Penn State, or if it's an Ohio State, those teams aren't going to allow you just to line up and run the ball for a zillion yards.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. You're going to have to hit some plays in the passing game. And I don't know, man, if they've got the guys to be able to do it.
Yeah, a guy like Ryan Wingo, really good freshman wide receiver, but he's a step behind guys like Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith. And so if he was to that level, then yeah, he would definitely be the go-to guy at, an 18-year-old age. But like you said, I mean, they were missing Isaiah Bond too, so that was one weapon that, he's really good, but not great. But he's, still not on the field. It opens it up a little bit more for him. But
I want to make sure I say this. I'm not saying Texas doesn't have weapons. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they don't have like that dominant guy that can go and like take over a game. They've got, again, 5 or 6 guys that are on the field at any given time, which some people may say that might be better than having one dominant guy and a few role players. But it's just strange that Texas, with as much, like as well as they recruit and as much NIL, as how good they are in the NIL world and stuff, that they don't have that guy that is just so elite on the perimeter in the passing game. Just strange.
I mean, on the other side of the ball, Clemson has got some weapons at wide receiver. They're back to kind of saying, okay, we got some Clemson wide receivers back in there.
How good are they going to be next year, bro?
You got Cade Klubnik back for another season. Are you buying more stock in Clemson?
Oh, don't worry. I can't wait for. I'm sure that odds makers won't get caught napping this year. They were just handing out free money this year with Clemson over 8.5, which I of course cashed. But that wide receiver room with Klubnik coming back, and ACC play, man, they're going to be a problem.
You got Williams, next year. You got Wesco out there,
TJ Moore, they were good. They've. I was really impressed with them, man. And like a typical Dabo team, bro. They no quit, kept coming, kept making plays. They looked like they'd been in big games before. Like the moment wasn't too big for them. Texas again, man. Just that run game. That Clemson just could not stop the Texas run game.
Yeah. Texas gets Arizona State. Obviously, there's a big discrepancy in talent and blue chip ratio. Same with Penn State, Boise State. But if there's 2 coaches I'm not going to underestimate, it's Spencer Danielson and Kenny Dillingham. So I know those guys are going to do their best, and they're going to motivate their team as best they can. I wouldn't be surprised to see those teams come out. A lot of energy, a lot of fire in the first quarter, first half of those games. Unfortunately, we see that in other games too, where, neutral field, and it just kind of, it takes its toll. I mean, when you got a team like Texas going up against Arizona State, Arizona State hasn't faced a physical bunch like that, and they're just running on you and running on you and running on you and leaning on you in that third and fourth quarter. It's tough to take, man. So looking forward to those games. That game's going to be on at 1 p.m., I think, maybe noon on New Year's Day. Then you got the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. New Year's Eve, you got Penn State, Boise State, and the Fiesta Bowl out in the desert. So That's it for our CFP recap. You got anything else you want to talk about real quick on CFP or any of these games or looking ahead to the future?
No, man. Just I think it's obvious that the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl are the two games that are headlining the next four games that we're going to see coming up. And we're obviously going to have big breakdowns on all four of these matchups. I think you said our next episode will come out Monday. What is that?
Monday the 30th.
30th? Yeah, December 30th. So
Yep.
we'll have some breakdowns of those matchups. May have a special guest if we can see if somebody wants to come on and talk some ball with us. But if not, you boys right here will be here to break it down for you. And I can't get off here without saying that, hey, I put out best bets in all four games, and I went 3-1.
It's not bad.
I wasn't scared. I went 3-1. So we'll see if we can. I may put out best bets in all four of the next games too.
Yep. It's in the green, man. You got bowl games this week, 23rd and 24th, 26th, 27th. Then they start ramping up on the 28th. You got Colorado playing that day. I got them at -1 early. I think they're -5 right now. So some good bowl games coming up. I think your boys are playing on the 31st. So we'll talk about some of those games and then touch on the CFP quarterfinals when we are back a week from now. Merry Christmas to everyone. Hope you enjoy your families and good times. Just kind of celebrating the season. So we'll see you next Monday.